Hey now, it's your Auntie Ashley.
What's up? It's your girl, Auntie Suge.
Hey, it's your girl, Auntie Quiche.
Hey y'all, it's Auntie Amber.
This podcast is for educational purposes only. We are qualified clinicians who will cover various topics on mental health and will sometimes provide community resources. We are not being paid by any organization for our content, and any information we provide is general and pertains to our own personal experiences. We do not, I repeat, we do not provide psychotherapy, diagnoses, or treatment recommendations on air. Any concerns related to your individual mental health should be directed to your medical and mental health professionals. We are not responsible for others' decisions or the subsequent consequences.
So now that we got all that out of the way, let's get into this hot sauce and let's stir this pot. Recently, we at the Clinical Cookout have been talking about whether you should kick your kids out at 18. We want to thank Candace for this hot sauce because one of the hot topics that we've been kind of discussing and mulling over is, what do you do when your kid is unruly? Do you kick them out at 18? Do you help them launch? What does that look like?
Kick their asses out. 18, you grown? Bye-bye.
Shut up.
I did not think Amber would be going to say that. She lying.
No, I don't believe that.
She is not kicking her kids out. Or we already know that. You know it.
No, I was just going to say, 18 is the legal age. So legally, yes, you can kick them out and not really be responsible for them. But let's remember that just because somebody's 18 doesn't mean they're functioning like an adult. They can still be functioning like a 10-year-old or a 15-year-old and not be ready to be out on their own. So in that case, I would say no.
I have a hard time with this one. And the reason why I always have a hard time with this one is because I watch people who actually launch their kids, and I feel like it goes better when you don't just say, oh, okay, you 18, you get out. Because why would we put our kids in struggle? The first thing a kid at 18 wants to do is what? Get their own apartment on the credit that they don't have. And then so a lot of times at 18, they ain't even mature enough to be in their own apartment, working through their credit. That's how a lot of skin folk mess up our credits and end up in debt and end up looking crazy later on because we just had to get out at 18 because those adults that kicked us out was trying to make it on their own. And I just think it do a disservice.
I absolutely agree. I am not putting my kids out at 18 is not grown. 18 is still mentally a very risky, undeveloped child. It really is. And I feel like, I don't want to make this stereotypical, but I feel like we are one of the only cultures, Black Americans in particular, who even do that. Other cultures don't seem to do that. Like they maintain a lot of family in one household until everybody is established or on their feet or headed towards some sort of success and can take care of themselves. So it always boggles my mind when we're like, nah, 18, you grown, you gotta go. I'm like, because on the other hand, a lot of people sound like hypocrites because you're saying they grown, but then you're saying 18 is not grown in other instances. 18 can't even buy a drink. So they're not grown.
That's true. And another thing too is, well, okay, so in some countries, they feel like it's okay because 18 can buy a drink. And some countries start drinking like earlier and stuff like that. And so I think that's where we got this whole, well, when you're 18, you're grown, because in other countries, it's like, well, they're starting all of that early. Then you get America and then you mix it in with that. And they're like, no, at 18, it's time for you to get out of the house. So I was put out at 18. I would never do that to my kid. I think it helped me because I had no choice. I didn't have a plan B. I still don't have a plan B. I am plan B. So I think that it did help me. But at the same time, I don't think that if I didn't, make certain choices, I wouldn't have been ready. Like I couldn't have just went straight to college because I didn't even like school. And so what would I have done?
I also think about the anxiety associated with that too. And like as a kid or someone who's 18, I will say this, a lot of older teenagers won't necessarily tell their parents, like, I'm not ready. Like, please don't kick me out. I'm not ready. Some will, but a lot of them won't. And so when it gets close to that point where they're turning 18 and they know that their parents have been saying, you about to be 18. If you ain't doing that, you get now, you about to be 18. Think about the anxiety that provokes when you don't feel comfortable enough to tell your parent, I'm not ready, but you know you're not ready. So that's like worrying, constantly worrying about, okay, what am I going to do next? Because I'm in school right now. I suck at school. I'm not doing great. What am I going to do next? And then that worry turns into what might look like anger or what might be considered unruly because they don't know what to do with that. And you're about to kick them out. So there's like the anxiety, and then there's this whole attachment thing too. Like this one person who's supposed to be launching me, taking care of me, helping me make it in this world is about to just kick me to the curb.
Mm-hmm. You made me think about something though, Auntie Amber, because I lived with my mom, me and my husband, when we were first starting out. We stayed with my mom for a few months because one, I was a new mom. I was pregnant. Well, I was pregnant when we moved in with her, but we moved back to my hometown and we stayed with my mom for a few months. But it brings up that fact of 18 and up children who do live at home. The one thing that you got to remember is because you are still under your parents' roof, you still got to follow certain rules. You might feel like you grown, but you don't pay a bill in that house. That is still your parents' house. So it's a level of respect that you still have to show the owner of that home, regardless. Like you can't just like we would go out. And of course my mom was like, y'all grown, y'all good, I got the baby. But if I was gonna be out past midnight, I call my mother, like, Ma, we gonna be out a little while longer. I'm grown doing that because I don't want to walk in another person's house at 2 and 3 in the morning like it's mine. It's not mine anymore.
But if you look at it a little bit differently, because you're saying like these are rules that you have to follow in the parent's house, but not only are they rules, they're just like regular adult things too. Like cleaning up after yourself. Your mama gonna tell you to clean up after yourself, but if you're 18 and you get your own apartment, you're gonna need to clean up after yourself. So you're gonna have the same, not necessarily rules, but the same like functioning at your own house that you would do there. But because it's your parents, the perception is, oh, they got all these rules. I'm 18, I'm grown, and they still telling me what to do. No, you'd still be doing that shit anyways. If you had a babysitter and you hired her to watch your kid and you said, you know what, we're going to be out for a couple of hours. When it gets past that couple of hours, you're going to call your babysitter and be like, oh, you know what? We're going to be out a little later. Is that cool? We'll pay you an extra $20. But it's not a rule because it's something that you would still have to naturally do.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's true. But I mean, what about your 18, 19, 20, 21 year olds, single, no kids? If they have their own place, they can come home whenever they feel like it. They can bring a guest home if they feel like it. You can't do that when you live with somebody else. You can't. You don't have that freedom.
I didn't get kicked out, but I volunteered to leave at 19. But I did tell my mom. I was like, listen, if I don't make it, can I come back? Because I needed to make sure that I had a place to stay. But when you guys were talking, I do agree with not sending your kid out at 18. I think about, I know I look at things from a systemic level. So I think about how, other families are able to build generational wealth. And part of it is because they're not kicking their kids out at 18. They're allowing their kids to save up or helping them, at least put a down payment on a home if that's what they choose to do, or even helping them get through college, paying their rent and things of that nature. If they move to college. But I that's why I say it's so important for people to think about when they have kids. You do not stop becoming a parent because your child turned 18. That responsibility does not end at 18 when the clock strikes 12. It just doesn't. And so for me, it's important to continue to have that opportunity for whoever, if I had children, to have that opportunity for them to save up for whatever that they need. But one question did come to my mind is, what do you do about the parents who make their children pay bills in the house when they are 18? So I know this may veer off a little bit, but there are those parents who do have their children. If they don't move out, they pay something, electric, part of rent, or whatever. So what do you guys think about that?
I can more so understand that. I can more so understand that as the idea of, okay, you still are 18 and you're getting older. You're gonna eventually be on your own. You have to understand this responsibility of paying bills. And how else will I make you understand it and figure it out if I don't give you that responsibility. But I don't think it should be like, they're still not a roommate. This is still your child. So to say, hey, you got to go half on these bills now, I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. But to say, hey, can you at least cover the water bill? Or could you at least give me money for groceries since you're still going to be here consuming the food in this house? Like, I understand that. And something dope that a parent did, they wrote about it on Facebook. They made their child think that they were helping with the bills, and they made them pay half or like something like that. But they set all that money aside for when that child was ready to move out and gave them that start money. That was dope to me. I was like, because in their mind, I'm paying bills. Like, I can't be late giving my mother and my father this money. But what they were really doing was making that seed for them when they were ready to go.
That's dope. I mean, shoot, that's dope. That's actually a good idea. I don't think, and this is a Rashonda thing. I don't think that I would necessarily make them pay bills. I think I'll make them pay their own bills. Like if you have your car note, you have your car insurance, you have your phone bill, and then that's until they finish college, because then you're still giving them that little, there's still a power differential there, right? So because if you're gonna be staying in my house and you're gonna be paying half the bills, you're gonna think you have half of the responsibility to make some rules, and that's just not true. And so I think what I will do is I'll have them paying their own bills and setting themselves up. And then that way they learning how to pay bills, but they're not necessarily paying the bills in my household because God willing, I'm going to have it. That's just the way I would do things. So I used to watch the Duggars, and I used to love that show because what they would do is they would keep the kid in the house, let them go through school, they would get married or whatever, and then they would put them in like their own little house as a married couple. And then they would they would give them put them like in touch with the business and everything. So they were learning the business or they were making money. And then when they were ready to move out and pay their own bills and get themselves together and have their own car and stuff like that, then they bought a house. And so they weren't setting them up. They weren't pushing them into poverty. I like that about that family.
Yeah, and I agree. I think if it's reasonable, yes, I mean, your kid can pay bills, but it also doesn't start at 18. Like when they turn 18, you don't just automatically say, oh, okay, now you got bills to pay. It starts a little bit earlier. I mean, even like young children, you can teach them about saving. You can teach them about paying bills. So like when you give your kid their $20 allowance at, I don't know, $20 ain't nothing these days, but at 10 years old, and you have them save $10, you have them spend $5, and then the other $5 goes towards, I don't know, trash bags or some shit. I don't know. But, teaching them that early so that when it gets to the point that they're 18, they already have that knowledge of financial stability, or at least, being able to navigate their finances, to where when you say, okay, now you're a little bit older, you're now legally an adult, I need you to pay half of the water bill. It's not like, I don't know what to do. Like, I ain't never had a job. I ain't never had money. I don't know what to do, because you've already slowly started teaching them that and introducing it. But if it's where you haven't taught it to them before, they turn 18 and all of a sudden, boom, they got to pay all these bills. I don't agree with that. Absolutely not. That's not okay.
There was a TikTok where a woman said that her father started her and her brothers on taxes early. Like they would have them do something and he would take a percentage of it. She was like, so now as an adult, I don't even think twice. It doesn't make me upset to pay taxes because my dad already taught us that growing up. So whenever there's a big chunk taken out, it's like no reaction because it's already expected. So I agree with the slow buildup, because then your child's not shocked when bills do come in and they have to basically pay the necessities so that way they can survive. And they've already been doing it, so it shouldn't be a shock.
That tax is very important. I didn't even think about that till you just said it. I remember my first job in high school and my first paycheck, and I didn't know about taxes. I had tabulated what I was supposed to bring home in my head based off the hours I worked and what I made. And when I got that check, I was like, Mom, what the hell is this? I was heated. She's like, girl, that's taxes. Everybody pay taxes. I was like, no, I worked for that. She had to explain it to me. So it's really good to do that with your kids early. But also, Auntie Amber made me think of something. realistically, what job does an 18-year-old have where they can realistically cover half or whole of any bill? Because at 18, I worked at a bakery making minimum wage.
It's 2022, baby.
I'm about to say these 18-year-olds are getting influencer positions and making millions of dollars based off their social media.
Some of them, yes.
Yeah,
Some of them are working in McDonald's still, regular teenage jobs like fast food, working at the mall. I'm like, yeah, I don't know if an 18-year-old can carry some bills, like for real deal bills. I'm
They can
grown.
carry their own bills. If you making a
That's
bill, you
assuming-
better carry it.
They can carry their phone bill. I don't
Sure.
agree about the car insurance though. Because car insurance for if my mother had made me get my own car insurance at 18, I would have been poor. Car
But
insurance
they don't have to do that though. They could,
They-
they could be up under your car insurance and they could
Right.
give you that money. They could pay the bill.
Yeah,
Because
probably.
if you driving the car, why am I paying for your car insurance? My mother paid my car insurance until I got my own car and moved out. And then she was like, you pay your own bills. And that's basically how it happened for me.
I was poor.
But also, 18, and let's assume no kids. You're done with school. If you choose not to go to college, if you're working at McDonald's and you're not making enough to pay your bills and save, then you can get a second job. I don't know why these kids think it's beneath them these days to have more than one job or to have more than one stream of income.
I can answer that one for you, Amber.
Do it, baby. Do it.
So one of the things that they talked about on like social media is how Gen Z now views working differently than how we, like as millennials, boomers, and all of us. So basically they see it as, okay, well, we don't have to work. We're not running ourselves into the grounds like y'all did. Y'all ran yourselves into the ground. We shouldn't have to work 2 jobs just to live. Someone said to me that the man literally convinced humans to pay bills on a floating rock. And I have been thinking about that for a long time. Like, we are literally on a floating rock and somebody convinced us to enslave ourselves and work to the death of us on a floating rock. What?
And to pay for stuff that should ultimately be for, why am I paying for water? Water is a natural resource. Why am I paying for water?
Right.
Well,
So the new generation is just like, we're not working twice as hard to still be at the same level that y'all been at for 20 years. They're like, we're just not doing that.
But you can have multiple streams of income and not
True.
do physical labor for multiple jobs.
Listen,
like,
Gen
if
Z
you-
said no.
That's
Yeah,
different,
if you, because entrepreneurship is a big thing now. You can make money without really doing much. Like, so you can sit at home on your couch and make money. But just assuming just one job, yes, you can. Absolutely.
Wait, but that makes it sound like it's just such an easy thing. If it was that easy, a lot of people would have blew up by now. It's not
Some stuff
that.
is. Okay, so if you work at McDonald's, right, and you're making a certain amount of money, and you invest a portion of that money into something, into stocks or whatever, you making money back from that. If you're smart about it and you learned about it and you know what you're doing, or you have somebody that knows what they're doing, you're making money off of that and you ain't doing nothing to get that money. That's the second stream of income. So there are different ways these days to make more money, and not them pyramid schemes.
But let's consider
Pyramid
pyramid scheme. Not you out here with the MLMs. Don't do that.
Amber.
And we got to think, Auntie Keisha always stick with the macro level stuff. Like, macro level systemic issues. How many kids, 16, 17, growing up in urban areas in the hood, know how to invest in stocks? They don't teach that at school. That's something you got.
They don't teach that in our homes.
They don't teach
Let's
that.
say that. They don't teach that in our
homes.
They don't even
That's
teach
what
that in
needs to
college
change.
unless you take a particular course that you chose to take to learn that. They're not learning that.
The Black community has been the one for the last umpteen billion years that has not been teaching their kids about money exclusively. Everybody else you go into an Arabic family, they in the store, and the kids is in the store from the time they could speak. And they're working and they're learning how to manage that store and they're learning the game and they're learning how to manage money and they're learning when daddy die, you got to take care of all your aunties and all your sisters and all your cousins. We don't learn that. And a part of the reason why we don't learn that is because we don't have those resources, right? We're not given the same resources. But even when we are given the same resources, what are we buying? We're consumers. We're the biggest consumers. We're not the ones that we're selling everything. We're consuming everything. Everybody always got a hat of Jordans. You see people in the projects dressed better than Leonardo DiCaprio walking down the street. That's how our community rolls. So let me ask y'all this question. We talked about parents launching their kids way too early, but what about when your kid is just downright in your house and disrespectful? What about when there is a step parent involved? How do you manage that when you have those kids in your house that don't pay bills, but they still think that their voice is just as boisterous as yours?
You ain't my mama. You ain't my daddy.
Do you see yourself as a step parent? I don't look at myself as a step parent, and I don't see my son as a stepchild. The only thing he's known is me as a father. Like when I married his mother, I accepted him as a son. I don't treat him any differently than I would treat any other of my children. He has the same benefits. He stands to reap everything that my biological children would reap. I mean, he's in my will. He's my child. I don't look at him as step anything. That's my son. Do you and your spouse parent the child the same as the other children? Yes, absolutely. There's no difference. I don't think that there's more love shown. I think I show them both the same amount of love, the same amount of care, the same amount of affection.
So I know that our guest was saying that that's not really too common of an experience, but that's a very similar experience that I had. My stepdad came into my life when I was 2, maybe a little younger than that. So he's always been my dad. I've never called him stepdad, never looked at him as my stepdad. And I don't think I've ever had any moments where I looked at him and just said, like, you ain't my daddy. You can't tell me what to do, because he's always been there, always been supportive, always been a good role model, and, trying to teach me and help me learn and grow. Yeah.
But did you know, like, when did you know growing up that he wasn't your real dad?
As far as I remember, I've always known. But my biological dad was in jail for most of my life. I never knew why. I was told all the way up until I was an adult that he stole a couch, and that's why he was in jail all them years. And even when he was like in and out of jail, he would like come see me or like try to take me to do things. He had like a whole other family. I didn't care, because like what I had at home between my mom and my dad, which my stepdad was my dad, I didn't feel any void. I didn't feel like there was anything missing. So I just kind of stayed there. Like I didn't care what he was doing. I was angry for a little bit in college, because then he started trying to come back. Oh, I'm so proud of you and this, that, and the other. And I'm like, but you ain't my daddy. So why are you saying all of this? And you ain't had nothing to do with it. My daddy was the one who had something to do with it. He's the one that got me to this point, not you. So I was angry at my biological father, actually, which is just a spin on what we're talking about today.
I feel like that's rare, like where you get the person that just comes in and they're like, and I mean, not super rare, because I know that like my niece is like that, like where she only knows my brother as her biological father, and it's like, that's her dad, and that's all she has. And like he took her, I think she was like in her mom's belly, and he was just like, oh, that's my kid, and like it's always been his kid. And so it's not necessarily rare, but I think that that's the ideal situation, because you don't have anybody giving you pushback, because you are daddy. And you don't have anybody saying, don't discipline this child this way, because in essence, it's your child. But that's a good situation to be in. And I think that's kind of what our guest was saying, is like, I think I would rather have it like that, because I don't have to deal with those other parents. But Sometimes it ain't like, I know it wasn't like that for me. I knew who my dad was. It was like, no, that's my dad. And um, I think I was in like depression as a teenager because it was like, I'm looking at this situation. I hate it. I want my dad because my dad is who I'm used to. I don't want this other person. And then now we're in a situation where this person wants to discipline, but I'm in a house. And so I'd be danged if somebody sit in my house and think they don't have to follow my rules and I pay the bills and I can't say anything to them when they acting up.
I think that's the distinguishing factor, though. Like, it's not rare to find the situation that our guest had or that Amber had when the child is younger. When you talk about somebody who that baby wasn't born yet, or that baby is 1, 2, 3, even 4 or 5 years old, that becomes the only parent they know. That parent can discipline them. But when you talk about a 10-year-old, 11, 12, and this new person is coming in their life, especially if they did know their other parent or is they are in relationship with that other parent, that's a totally different dynamic. That's where you get that mindset of, I have a mother, I have a father. Like, you my mother's boyfriend or whatever, or husband. You are not my parent.
Like, it's like, okay, you're my mother's boyfriend, you're the husband, you're not the parent. When do that person get to discipline? Is it when they're the husband, when they're the boyfriend, or do they cross the line into when it's like they get married and now all of a sudden, okay, now all of a sudden you can discipline. Now you can have this power over the child. Like, how does that happen? Like, who makes a decision on when it happens, and what does it look like to y'all? I'm asking opinion because, we all work with families.
My mom's never been married. She has dated. She has introduced, people she's dated to me, but she was one of those people like, you don't have to meet this person until further down the road when I know it's serious. So I didn't meet, I think I met 2 people, but either way, I think her mindset was always, you will never discipline my child. You let me know and I'll handle that. And it was because she also told me, you will never disrespect somebody that I bring in front of you. You will respect them as the adult that they are. No matter how you might feel, they are still an adult. They are in my life. You will respect them, but they were never going to discipline me. That was her job.
I mean, I don't know. I feel like when it comes to the discipline, I feel like, so in any parenting relation where there's multiple parents, all the parents need to be on the same page, or all the caregivers need to be on the same page with what discipline looks like. So communication would be like my first thing. Like, once you've communicated to your partner what you expect in terms of disciplining children, and you both kind of like, they don't have to agree with you, but you both kind of like compromise on what you both agree is okay with disciplining a child, then maybe that's a good point to introduce it to the child and also communicate with them too what's happening. Because oftentimes, from what I've seen, is that the step parent is introduced into the picture first. The child, like, there was no communication with this child, or it was like very little, like, oh, mommy has a boyfriend or daddy has a girlfriend, you want to meet them, without understanding how that child's feeling about the situation. And then this child has not yet had the chance to process that this new person is now an authority figure, or now another parent or another caregiver for themselves. And then they start disciplining them. And that's when the pushback comes in, because this child is like, yo, I still don't even know what's happening. And now you're trying to tell me what to do? So the communication is often lacking. So if it's communicated between the partners, like, hey, if you are to discipline the child, what would it look like? Let's agree on something. Then talking to the child, like, hey, you know what? This person's here and they're going to be here long term. So this is what it's going to look like. Then maybe that's how you can try to, like, at that point when the communication has been done and the child understands, the partner understands, that might be a good time to start with the discipline.
I was just going to agree with the communication aspect of with Auntie Amber, because it's important to understand what people's value systems are and what their, maybe their traditional ways that they may be disciplined by their own family. And so if you're going into a new family, it is important to communicate, because what if your family believes in whoopings? Well, the other family doesn't. or your partner's family hasn't believed in that. So, communicating, okay, what does this look like when we come together, and how will this child, take that in? I think it's important to talk about it. So I agree.
Yeah, me too. And I thought about that too, Keish, if the family's disciplined differently. Because like as Amber was talking, I was like, my dad never spanked me. I never got a spanking from my dad ever. He would never hit me. He yelled at me one time and that was enough. So it would have been very hard for me for another man to come in and put their hands on me. If my own father doesn't hit me, you won't hit me. That would have been my mindset. But communication is key. But I'm thinking, like, how hard is that communication? Because it's already hard for a couple to communicate. Like, it's hard for me and my husband to communicate about how to parent these kids sometimes. So now you got 3 people having to communicate how we are going to raise and co-parent this child. That's got to be difficult.
I think it is difficult. And one thing you said earlier, Auntie Ash, she was talking about how your mom said, come to me to discipline my child. So when you actually have the step-parent relationship in place, if I'm paying the bills in this house and your child is out of pocket and your child is disrespectful, and sometimes teenagers are disrespectful just because they have emotions, there's puberty, there's things that are happening, there's no power. And so they do feel like, they need to express themselves. And everybody knows teenagers are impulsive. And so if I'm an adult, and a teenager feels like, okay, well, I'm going to get one up on this person. My mother's not here, or they feel disrespected and they have to defend themselves. I'm not telling the mother. Like for some step parents, that's how they are. They're like, I'm not going to tell on you. This is my house. What I look like telling on you when I pay the bills in here. That's when things I think get kind of sticky. Like, I'm not going to go snitch on you to your mother and let her discipline you. I'm going to tell you about yourself in my house because this is where I pay the bills at.
I agree. And see, my mom was never put in the position to have to. Like, nobody ever lived with us. It was never that serious, and she never got married, like I said. So we weren't there. Now, my dad did get married, but my dad wasn't my primary parent. So his wife at the time was just that. She was his wife. She wasn't my stepmother. She was his wife. She never even wanted to play that role. Like, she never even wanted to step into those shoes of, I'm your stepmother. I had my mother. I spent time with my dad here and there, and she didn't want to fill that spot, so it was never difficult. It was like, this is just her. It's not my stepmom.
I was gonna say too, just like as a step parent, remembering. So this is if you're coming in a little bit later on, the kid's 10, 11, maybe even 14, 15. Just remembering that for a long time, it's been that child and their primary parent, and you're coming into their environment, and you're having to learn yourself how to function in that environment. The child is having to learn how to function with another caregiver, and then the primary caregiver is having to learn how to function with both of you, because these are like both important people in this person's life. So just recognizing that you're coming into this situation and having a little bit of empathy, a little bit of understanding with what this child is dealing with having a new person come into their life, will go a long way in terms of how do I discipline, or what do I do when they're acting this way or talking to me this way or whatnot. Just understanding like it's a new situation. Now, my question is, when it's a long, like you get some kids that just never get used to it. Like this step parent been in their life for 5 to 10 years, and this teenager is still acting like you ain't my parent and you can't tell me what to do. So what's y'all's thoughts on those situations?
Sometimes it's the other parent. That's what I think. I think sometimes the other parent plays a big role in whether the kid has good adaptive functioning in the step parent role. Mm-hmm. And I've seen first of all, I've seen a lot of people where I didn't even know that they were a step parent. I was like, that's not your kid, because they do it so well. But I've also seen people have to go to parenting classes together. So, okay, that's your wife, but I'm the biological mother, and then the judge have ordered them to go to parenting class together, because I think people get mixed up in thinking that they're trying to scratch their own itch or they're trying to make themselves feel better. And they don't realize that everything you do should be in the best interest of the child. So this is the perfect time to kind of segue into that, based on what we were just talking about how sometimes the other parent is the problem in adaptive functioning of the kid in the step-parent relationship. So one of our very special guests, and this person will not be on, but, gave us a little bit of her story just to put some context behind the step-parent episode. In the past, whenever I would hear men say that their child's mother was keeping them away from the kids, I would always assume they were lying, and that's only because my parents were the best at co-parenting. So I couldn't fathom that women were actually doing this. But unfortunately, I'm experiencing this firsthand with my husband and the mother of his son. I've watched him go to court, agree to child support, and a custody agreement, only for her to still pick and choose when he would be able to see his son. Recently, she texted that she did not want her son coming until they, the parents, could start getting along. As a result of this, my stepson is caught in the middle and is unsure how to act around us, but especially me. It's sad because I want to treat him like I treat my own children, but I can tell he's uncomfortable when I hug or touch him, and honestly, I'm uncomfortable touching him also based on things his mother has told him. Anyways, I didn't understand how men would just give up on seeing their children and how the wife would stay with them. But now that I'm living this, I understand it is not so black and white, and that I also understand why men wait until the child is old enough to decide if they even want a relationship with the child. For me, that hits heavy. Because if I want to be a figure for this child, if I want to be a bonus for this child, if I want to love this child, but this child don't know if they're allowed to love me because they might get in trouble when they go home, that's not in the best interest of the child.
So that's a really difficult, tough situation to be in. And it also brings up the concept of parental alienation, which is when a parent viciously turns their child against the other parent or against that step parent. People do this. Like she said in her story, I didn't believe that women actually did this until I felt it for myself, till I got in a situation where I felt it. So that idea of like poisoning your child's mind against that other parent's partner is something to really consider, and why that would happen, because you don't know that person usually. So why would you do something like that?
Because they still be wanting a spouse.
I be telling these parents to get over themselves, because you got your own stuff that you dealing with. You want to be with this man or this woman so bad that you're going to keep your child from them until y'all get along, knowing good and dang on well y'all ain't going to get along no time soon. It's also separating the personal stuff from the parenting stuff. Whatever is between you and your ex or whoever, that doesn't have to come in between your relationship with your child, their relationship with their child, and y'all's relationship as co-parents. So that's I get on parents a lot about that, because I'm like, this is about you parenting your child. It don't have nothing to do with how y'all feel about each other. Y'all already done for. You want him so bad, that's on you. You need to go therapy and figure that out. Figure out why you so attached to this person that don't want you, why you still clinging to this. But for now, your kid needs to feel safe. They need to feel loved, and they need to feel like it's okay for me to love both parents, even though they don't love each other.
But I agree with that. It's some bitter baby mothers and baby fathers out there, just bitter. Don't want to see that person move on and happy and be with another person, and feels like they can hold that child as kind of like a pawn in the situation. But we can't ignore the fact there that sometimes that other parent is sending very mixed signals. I have literally heard men say, I will always have access to my baby mama because she's my baby mama. No matter who I'm with, no matter what I'm doing, I will have access to her. And they will send mixed messages. So we have to really understand all the dynamics in those situations. Like, what is that person that we are seeing as bitter? Like, you won't let this person go. But what is this person whispering in their ear when nobody's listening? What could that be?
that can also be handled in therapy, because they can learn the red flags of when somebody is, playing around with them, that bitter parent. Because there's something that's drawing you back to that situation, and that person's playing with you. And sometimes you might not know, but maybe when you get a therapist like me or like one of us that's real direct, will tell you something ain't right with the situation. But you do need to have somebody else to talk to figure out what's going on and why you still drawing yourself back to that when it's unhealthy for you. And just because it's unhealthy for you doesn't mean it's unhealthy for the child. You can have some sucky husbands and partners, and they can be some bomb ass fathers or mothers. And that's just that.
I'm so glad you said that. Yes, you could be a horrible partner, but a wonderful parent.
But how would y'all handle that? Like, how would because I was talking about how I knew a couple that actually went to like parent counseling. How would you handle parent counseling? Like, what would parent counseling look like to you? How would you work with those three people?
Oh, I wouldn't do counseling with all three of them, so I don't know. I do one at a time.
Yeesh, you a social worker. You can't just not say nothing the whole episode.
Really should.
I'm just gonna say it out loud.
So I guess, I would take the individual approach at first. But then I would eventually probably have, if it's not too volatile for the child, and depending on the child's age, I would definitely have a conversation with the adults first before including the child, just to kind of get a feel as to how they interact with each other. Because if it's going to be volatile, everybody's yelling, screaming, they're going back and forth, and we're not getting anything accomplished, then I'm going to need to check them first. And I'm going to need to set them straight as to why we're all here and what the main goal is. And if the main goal is to make sure we can get co-parenting together for this child, because 9 times out of 10, if parents aren't getting along and there's some riffraff between parents, I can probably mostly say that child has behavioral issues or has some sort of, depression, anxiety, or whatever that may be coming out of them two not getting along. So I would eventually have them all together, but I would do them individually, and then I would do the parents together first, and then bring the child in, and see what this looks like. But typically, we have to dissect what's internally going on with the parents first, since they're the head, they're the primary.
Yeah.
Is that good enough, Chug, for you?
Good job.
I think there is something called I think it's called co-parenting counseling, but there's also another name for it that works
mediation.
It's what? Sorry.
Co-parenting mediation.
Yeah, it works with both of the not in legal. Are you talking about legal situation?
No, I'm talking about in the therapeutic world, in therapy world.
Yes, it's therapy.
Yeah, working with the primary parents, like Keisha's saying, and then introducing the other caregiver, because sometimes you'll have 2 step parents too, and then this child is going between the 2 homes, and there's different rules, different ways of disciplining, different everything, and they don't know how to act and eat, or they can't code switch. They can't figure out how to do that. So there is counseling for the 2 primary parents, and then introducing the additional caregivers once those 2 primary parents have figured out whatever is going on between them.
And let me just tell you, working sometimes with different parents and their step parents is more chaotic than working with children. Because I tell you, it can get ugly very quickly, and things will go south very fast. Yeah. So it's not always rainbows, and you would think that people act like adults. They don't. Their emotions is taking over, and they are literally screaming. It's a screaming match. So sometimes.
Listen, working with any type of family counseling dynamic where you talk about parents or parents and step parents and the kids, you literally see the inner child of these adults. You literally see it in the session. It comes out. So, like, that's why I fully agree with the way Keish laid it out, because I was thinking about it from a couples counseling perspective too. Like, usually with couples, you meet with them individually for one session to kind of get that individual take, and then you bring it together for a couple session. So I would handle it the same way. Meet with everybody individually first, then do the adults. Then if that child is old enough, bring the child into it if it's not volatile. But you do, like, depending on the situation, I'm sitting here like it's probably going to be volatile no matter what, because these people usually don't even understand communication skills. Like they don't understand that. So they have to,
So
like,
yeah.
all of them need individual therapy, period, to kind of work on
So
their own
yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
What I do with that, Auntie Ash, is I'm working with a family right now. Is I don't bring them all in separate. I love to bring everybody in. First of all, I don't mind an awkward room. If the room needs to be awkward, I'll let the flags fly. And then I watch the communication. I like to watch how the chips fall. I like to see who's talking over somebody. I like to see who keeps cutting somebody off. I like to see how the communication goes. And then I start pointing it out. And then like when I start pointing it out, everybody gonna get offended because everybody is at fault a lot of times. And then when you start pointing it out, people can actually see themselves. And then so when they start seeing themselves, then I go from the perspective of the child. Because if I can see this and y'all are all in the room, then imagine what the child sees. And people listen when a child starts talking because now they're embarrassed that this person who has no life skills can say, y'all are dysfunctional and it's affecting me. And then we go over the goals. What do we want to see for this child? How do we want this child to be? Do we want this child anxious? Because what this person was explaining is that this kid doesn't know how to love on her because his mother has told him things. So now when he goes to her house, he's anxious. He wants to love her. She wants to treat him like his child, but there's a boundary put up there and it's only affecting him. And so we start talking about, how healthy do you want to see your child? And when people have to define how healthy they want to see their child, they have to define ways to get that child healthy. And if it starts within them, then I'm like, well, okay, then that starts within you. So what are you going to do? So I always place the responsibility on them.
I like that.
And that's a really interesting approach though, because the way Keisha and I were talking about it is kind of keeping the child away from it. But the way you're talking about it, and this is Bowenian family therapy, by the way, where everybody in the room and you just doing your thing. But it's kind of like it's not anything that the kid hasn't seen before.
Right.
You know what I mean? So like you're basically just allowing them to communicate the way that they would at home. And the kid is then having the space because you're going to control who's speaking or not. But the kid now has the space to say, what y'all doing right now is what y'all do at home. And this is causing me some problems. So that's a really interesting approach. Yeah.
I like that approach. I didn't even think about it that way. And you know what? Just to make sure I'm clear, the only reason I said see them separately first is I do that with couples to assess if there's any abuse, because that will not come up in a session with everybody because people are afraid. So
but it's not wrong. The way you did it is not wrong. It's just I do it a different way. But I don't mind an awkward room. I'm the one that's like, okay, well, let me see how this goes. I like to watch the chaos.
Oh no, I was agreeing with that because that gives you a clear picture of what actually happens at that house or in those in that environment. So I love it. I'm just wondering, when you do have the family where it could be some abuse, that's a factor too. That may not come up in the full setting with everybody. You have to parse it out because people tend to tell you a little bit more when it's one-on-one that they might be afraid to say in front of everybody.
Mm-hmm. And you know what that looks like is that typically when you're doing family counseling, it's because you work with a kid and the kid is having so much dysfunction. And so you ideally in the situations that I'm talking about, you already have rapport with the kid. So I already know if there's abuse or if there's not abuse, because I'm not going to put you in a big room with all your abusers. But if I'm working with you to figure out why you're acting up in school, because that's one of the symptoms is acting out in school, shunning authority, being oppositionally defiant, having depression, wanting to sit on video games all day, not wanting to engage with other kids, not wanting to engage with other people, getting into fights. Kids bear all these symptoms. And so when you are working with that child, you already know what you're dealing with before you throw them in the room with all their dysfunctional parents.
And I did, it's interesting that we're doing this topic now because I did 4 evaluations this week. So in the past 2 days, I did 4 evaluations very similar circumstances. You have a biological parent who is either uninvolved or very inconsistent in and out, and then you have the primary biological parent and the step parent. And of all four of these children, and none of them are siblings, four different situations, all of them are showing aggression, verbal aggression, physical aggression with authority figures and with their peers. The behaviors are happening mostly at home and not always at school, not necessarily. And then there's like problems with concentrating. There's, not wanting to be like wanting to isolate when they're at home and not really be around the family. And so all of these parents are telling me like, this kid is just so aggressive. I just don't understand. I don't know where this is coming from. This happened 2 years ago and it's gotten worse and worse and worse. And I'm looking at this situation like, do you really have to be a therapist to see this? Like what is happening right now? Do you have to be a psychologist to understand kids who are depressed, who either feel like their biological parent doesn't love them anymore, or their biological parent is using them as a pawn? They are angry. Depression in kids is not always sadness and just like, it's anger. It is aggression because they don't know what to do with that. And it's coming out at somebody. And it's going to be somebody that reminds them of somebody that's inconsistent in their life. So when you have an angry child and you're in a step parent, primary parent type of family functioning, then maybe you should look at the situation instead of saying the problem is just with your child. Fix them right now because I don't understand what's happening. Sorry, I got real into that. But
well, because then you get the step parents that are like, well, I do A, B, C, D, E, and F for you. You know what I mean? Why are you not what I want you to be? I do all of this for you. Your parent is not doing that. You know what I mean? I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And they can't understand that, yes, while you are doing all of this, you are not my parent.
Yep.
And that does not always equal love. Like, I'm doing this. What does this mean? Because if this is just, I'm buying you this, I'm making sure you have this, it's not, you are not pouring into this child emotionally. Like I don't know when people, you can have or not have children, but you can show love in different ways. But some people just equate, okay, I'm a parent or a step parent, I'm just going to give to them materialistic stuff. Kids don't get that. Like, they want to spend time with you. They want to hear that you're proud of them. They want you to attend their, after school activities or even take them. Ask them how their day is going. Ask them what went wrong that day and what you can do to help them, get through the situation. Like, those things is what matter. I'm not saying if you do buy things as a step parent and that's the way you have gotten closer to the child, okay. But there's other things you can do to also create that bonding and that relationship with that child.
Listen, kids have love languages too. There's a book for children's love languages. It's the same thing. Every kid will take a gift, because who really not gonna take a gift? Like, sure, I'll take this gift, but this gift doesn't mean anything to me as far as how you show you love me, because that's not how I receive it. My kids are quality time kids, or two of them at least. If I sit on the couch with them and watch YouTube for an hour, that is love to them. Just that, because they need me to be near them. And people don't realize that how you think you are showing this child love is not how they receive it. And taking care of them as a step parent and paying bills, that doesn't register for a lot of kids. Because one, I heard a kid say it once. They were like, they want me to care and to think that that's something. I didn't ask them to do that. I didn't ask for that. I didn't even ask you to be here. So like, their mindset is totally different. They're not looking at it like that.
And well, sometimes even if you're like providing for that kid, my stepdad, he bought my glasses. He was buying my coats when it was cold. And it didn't matter, because it was like, okay, I want all of this. Thank you. But I don't want it from you. You are not the person that I want it from. So there has to be some kind of integration, and it can't be always an integration through power differential. I don't want it to always be like, I'm up here, You're down here. Kids understand that there's a power differential, but I don't want this person to have power over me that I didn't ask to have power over me. I love my mom, I love my dad, and these are the people who I want. Sometimes you can get whatever you want, but if it's not from who you want it from, it just doesn't feel the same.
Yeah, and that also speaks to like the whole idea of having a void, right? So this kid may always have that void that their biological parent is not there. And in situations like this, I do not like that analogy or the saying of like filling the void, because there's no way to really replace that biological parent. So the step parent shouldn't be trying to fill the void. They should be giving this child another caregiver to lean on when they start to fill that void. Like, oh, you know what? My biological mother is no longer around, but I have my stepmom who's doing this for me, who's showing me love in these ways, and kind of leaning into that, and that being a positive thing. Because no matter what, if the parent is not around, the parent is not around. That's always going to be a hole in that child's heart. But there are other ways to kind of help them manage that and deal with it a little better, instead of trying to replace that parent with someone else.
You ain't my mama. You ain't my daddy.
So if something like that was I was dealing with, I would really have to make the decision to say, hey, listen, this man isn't beneficial for you. It's kind of tough because, like, how do you tell a little boy that his biological father isn't doing the right thing, isn't saying the right thing, and he can't be in your life? But I think as that's a call that I would feel comfortable making. I think that's where I would have to step in and try to make those changes and try to let the biological parent know, hey, listen, you're not doing this right. You're not nurturing him correctly. You're not being considerate to his needs, his wants, his feelings. You're telling him that you're going to show up and not showing up. You're telling him you're going to do things and not doing them. And now I have to have these conversations like, shoot, your father really does love you. He just didn't have time to come. Your father really does care about you. I know he told you he was going to go take you to the movies, but he got tied up. So until he gets to an age where he can navigate these feelings, these emotions on his own, and he can make a decision if he wants you in his life, then it's not going to be anything. I'm okay with making that decision.
So he was saying when the step parent, the biological parent is inconsistent, they're not keeping promises, they're not showing up, meeting the kid's needs, disappointing the kid. Basically, is it the step parent's job to step in and let that biological parent know that they're not doing what they're supposed to do, or that it's not benefiting this kid for them to be in their life?
Ooh, sticky.
So I think it's the other parent's job. Like in his case, that mother needs to say something first. This is where I agree with my mother. You have to handle it because this is your child and that other biological parent's child first and foremost. Granted, that step parent could be a full-fledged parent to this child and been there since they were however old, but it's still, that's so sticky, that needs to come from the biological parent first. And I have direct experience with a biological parent not being there, not being consistent, or making promises and breaking them. I dealt with that a lot with my dad growing up, and my mother literally would have probably taken him completely out of my life if it hadn't been for me just wanting to have that relationship with my dad, because you never really get over that. You can work through it, you can go to therapy, you don't really get over that. And for kids, it's like, if I can't depend on this person to be consistent, I can't depend on anybody to be consistent. So that's where I struggled when it came to boys and men and dating. So it plays a factor. So that has to be addressed sooner rather than later. And if that parent needs to be told, look, do not make a promise. Do not tell this child you will be there. If you want to pop up and surprise them, do that. But do not tell them that you're coming and then don't show up.
I've never been married to someone as a step parent, but I've been a girlfriend to men who've had children. So I'm a big advocate, and Suge knows this line from me. I play my position. That's it. So I will not step in to say anything to this parent, but I will be a sounding board and support system for the person I'm dating. If they want to get some things off their chest, if they want to express how they feel and things of that nature, unless I'm directly being affected by the child or by the other parent, I'll play my position, which is shutting the fuck up. Period. That's just that.
Now, I'm not about to fool with you today, but
Yes,
okay.
you are.
So
Yes, you are.
this person's position is to be the step parent. This person doesn't see themselves as a step parent. They see themselves, I'm this child's father. You ain't even here. And then for me to put in all this hard work, for me to do, I'm working on social emotional stuff. I'm working on, your learning. I'm taking you to school. I'm picking you up. I'm your father. You're inconsistent. You don't feel like it's maybe a part of your position to be like, well, listen, hold on. Since we're all doing what's best for the child, how about you play your role, and which is being the biological daddy, or fall back, because in the
I will
best
say,
interest of this child.
okay, let me back up for a second. I will say that it can be done if people know how to communicate with each other. And I think that sometimes, like, from our perspective, we could do those things. Yes, could I speak to a mom? Absolutely. I have before, but I play my position. It's not that I'm going to go to them. That's not going to happen at all. But if something comes up and they ask me about it or ask my opinion on something, then yeah, I will communicate that effectively. But we have issues where we have a lot of parents who are not able to communicate effectively. And so that could tumble down a road that will be bad for everybody. So if you cannot communicate effectively with the parent who is inconsistent, I wouldn't even go that route, because people are protective over their kids, regardless if they in their life or not. Like, people, sometimes you never know if somebody be gonna go crazy over their kid. Don't you talk to my kid? You ain't raising. You know how that goes. So I say if there is a way to communicate appropriately with the other person, and that person knows communication skills, like, they really have to watch their tone. They really have to watch how they say things and gently tell this other parent, hey, like, we really want you to be a part of this. I want you to be a part of this. And, so-and-so, the child is missing out and they really want you here. So how can we effectively work together so we can reach that goal? Y'all see how, like, we spent that little therapist on that part? Yeah. Because we all trained to do that. But the average Joe is not trained to do that. He talking about, hey, man, for here, I've been raising your kid, this and that. Like, that's not going to work. So for me, if you have the proper communication skills, I think it could work, shit. I really do. But for me, I'm playing my position until somebody tap me on the shoulder and ask me. Then I will say.
Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of stuck on. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Mine was about to be stupid.
No, say it, Shug.
I don't want to hear it now. I want to hear it.
What happened to the biological parent that's like, yo, all y'all bills is paid? I ain't got to do nothing. I don't got to buy school clothes. I don't got to buy school supplies. I don't got to buy nothing.
All I got to do is show up.
Respect that. You better respect that person in that house. You respect that man. That's how I would be. Don't mess this up for us.
But okay, I'll be very serious. My dad wasn't a part of my life, and another man stepped in. He took care of everything that I needed. And you know what my dad did growing up? He didn't pay nothing from my mom or nothing. Now, granted, my mom wasn't married to him or anything like that. He was just a dad that I knew from track and field. But my dad wanted to call that man and tell him thank you for raising me.
Right.
Like, after all, like, I'm 30-something years old, and my dad was like, can I have the number to so-and-so? And I was like, for what? He's like, I just wanted to tell him to thank you for stepping in, taking care of my daughter. And, you the reason why you are who you are today because of him.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he put respect on his name, but, I get that part. He did.
Ideal. That is ideal because especially for men. And I don't want to make it all stereotypical and gendered, but we got to.
But you did.
Men are right. I did. Men are dealing with egos men have egos. So for a man to humble himself like
Women
that,
do too.
I was just about to say, you're going to have to, the women
I
do
feel like
too.
women are even worse.
women do too.
Yeah.
No, okay. Before, because if y'all jumped on me, the damn people in the comments really gonna jump on me. Yes, women have egos too, but I just know for a lot well, no, hell, that's women too. It's a pride thing. For some, they're never gonna be able to humble themselves to say thank you for stepping in and being that support for my child because it's a pride thing. Like, I ain't doing that. I ain't thinking that, nigga. I don't care. Like,
Yeah.
that's what it's gonna be. And that's like, to be able to that's a really grown up, very mature thing to do. If you are grown, you can realize that your child benefited from that person. Your child was the one who won, and you could say thank you.
But even in that situation, your child is still winning. But you'll get some people that's like, y'all not about to play house with my baby. That's where they at. Y'all think y'all gonna play house with mine? Mine eating at home. Mine is bathing at home. You know what I mean? And they make it harder for stepmothers or even girlfriends or something like that. If I'm a woman and I'm not with my husband, and I always tell him if something happened to me, I need to pick your next spouse because I want somebody that's gonna be like, I said it. I want somebody that's gonna love on my kids. I don't want no chicken heads. I want their learning to be the same as if I was there. And so if I'm a woman and I got somebody there and they're like, yo, what you need me to do? You need me to have this kid bathe for you to come and pick him up? Do you need me to feed him? Do you need me listen, have him, sis. Thank you for taking care of my kids.
Yeah, but see, the thing you just said is the thing that a lot of people do is I want the other parent or the step parent to be like this. Like, I want to make sure that they're doing this way, and this thing is happening this way, and my kids are taken care of in this way. And when it doesn't happen that way, that's when it's like, oh, it's either, oh, you better than me at taking care of my kids, and I don't want that. Like, that ain't happening. Or you not doing it the way that I think a step parent should be doing it.
I think you bring up a good point, Amber. That's a good point.
Yeah.
That's ego too.
That's
Because
ego.
what we require, with somebody like Suge, like she's saying, like, I want you to do X, Y, Z. Well, somebody else would be like, whoa, that's a lot. I can't do all that, or I was never raised like that, to do all that, and it could be overwhelming for somebody. So I didn't think about it that way.
I'm sorry, y'all. I am totally stuck on the fact that she said she got to pick the person that Abraham ended up with if something happened to her, because my mind immediately went to, well, sis, he chose you, so do you not trust his judgment? What the heck? Oh my Lord, never mind.
Listen, I respect that. Listen, I just spent a week with Suge. I respect that because that is a ran household. Ran, like, own schedule. They got their shit together over there. So
I can't meet Suge's standards, so I'm just worried about who this other woman might be. She ain't gonna
right.
make it. Ain't no other woman gonna make the cut. I'm sorry, Rashonda's standards are too freaking high for anybody to meet. It ain't happening.
That's not what I'm saying. Nobody can be me, right? Nobody can do it the way I can do it. I only trust Abraham with my kids. I don't really trust too many other people because I know my standards, right? But what I'm saying is if this woman wants to be there and if she's like, oh, I gave the kids a bath, what do you need? You get some stepmothers that's bomb like that. And they're like, I want to love on this kid. Like, that's our other guest was saying, I want to love on this kid. I'm like, have it. Thank you. Because you only helping my kid. No, I mean, and that's I'm a solidified. If I was a step parent, I'm a solidified mom. My kids know they're gonna know I'm mom because I'm bomb. But that other step parent is a bonus to me. I want a bonus, and I will have to pick them because no, I don't trust a man's judgment half the time. Not this one.
Okay.
Yes, I feel like there's luck in this decision.
Well, I had some questions, right? There's so many things that we didn't get to answer in this episode. So I'm wondering, excuse this cricket in the background, y'all. I'm going to find it when we done. I'm going to find it.
And shoot it.
The cricket
follow
is a
me
step
for
parent.
now. Follow me, fam, real quick. So I was just going to say there's so many questions we didn't answer. Like, a question I had would be, what the question just of whether the biological parent should be kicked out of that child's life if they're toxic enough. And then there's also the question about, what happens whenever the step parent and the primary parent have a biological child. that is now, that other child's sibling, and they're having to deal with that. So there's so many things that we could still get into, but I'm gonna pop us right on into the foil so we can go ahead and give some action on what you can do or certain things that you consider in situations like this. And maybe y'all can answer some of them questions in the comments.
One of the things that I strongly recommend if you have families that have difficulty adjusting to the dynamics of being step parents and just parenting in general, and I said it in the episode, I strongly recommend counseling. And a lot of people say I can't afford it, and you can, because if a judge is going to recommend it to you or you're going to do it on your own, either way, it's going to benefit the child. And so I always advocate for the child and just looking to see what's in the best interest of a child. And in situations like this, you want the most emotionally healthy child because you want a child that's able to articulate their feelings, that's able to talk to you about what they're thinking about the relationship that you've entered into. And you want this child to be able to foster a secure attachment with the individual that you want to spend the rest of your life with without hindering the child's development. And I do have a resource. It is called Raising an Emotionally Intelligent Child, The Heart of Parenting. And it's by John Gottman. And this book really challenges you to look into your parenting styles and the way that you want to parent and reach some goals when it comes to parenting any child, whether a step parenting dynamic or nuclear family dynamics. I did want to also say that everybody is not going to be able to pay for therapy, because I know that that's probably going to be something that comes up. But an unbiased mediator may also go a long way, because I think we all need somebody to sometimes weigh in on the situation and say, should you have said that or should you not have said that? And when I say unbiased, it's not to say your best friend who already knows the whole story is going to come in and slay your partner in the name of all step parent dynamics, but somebody who can actually give you some kind of leadership and somebody who can help you see you. And they also may have that child's best interest in their own hearts too. So I did want to clarify that, because I do know that there are judges that say you're going to this kind of parenting classes, and they do have parenting classes that are free. However, some people may not be comfortable with that. Some people can't get out of their own way. So an unbiased mediator is always a good asset too.
Yeah, I'm going to piggyback right off of that, because when it comes to introducing another parent or authority figure into a child's life, ideally the communication that we were talking about earlier would happen prior to the child even meeting this person. Understanding their views on children, their perspective on being a step parent, whether they're ready for it or not ready for it, what they need to get prepared for that. And this is happening between the primary parent and the step parent and the other biological parent if they're in the picture. But having that, understanding prior to introducing the child into a situation, and also understanding the child's feelings as well. Communicating with your child. Children are people. They are humans. They are aware of what's going on around them. They are very observant, and they can feel the tension in the room. They can feel certain emotions, but they don't know always how to articulate it or verbalize it. So talking with them about it. For younger kids, you can read books. I have a really great book here. It's called The Luckiest Child, Becoming a Blended Family. I actually got this book from a parent that I was working with. It was a divorced family, very, very messy situation. And this book was like a lifesaver for teaching that kid what a blended family is and how to understand what's happening and how to talk about it and how to deal with it. So communication, I guess, is my takeaway, and just making sure that it's happening in a very strategic way prior to the whole situation starting up. Because for a child, it's hard to understand what's happening when you haven't had relationships yourself to even understand what's going on.
I typically take the route of self-awareness. So I'm going to focus more so on the adults in the situation. Um, I think that the adults in these situations, biological parents, step parents, whoever is in this child's life, recognize and focus in on issues that you have, whether these are childhood issues that you are still dealing with, like work on you. I'm always going to tell adults to work on themselves when it comes to parenting kids, because your inner child is meeting that child. Your inner child is what is showing up when we have more toxic dynamics or issues. So you want to work on yourself, go to individual therapy, talk to somebody, take a parenting class, read the books that we're recommending here, or look for other books. But that inner work that you have to do as an adult is going to benefit that child as well. So if you can get yourself together, that's going to ultimately benefit that child. And it'll also show the child that there's nothing wrong with working on yourself. There's nothing wrong with admitting you have an issue, or admitting that you need to talk to someone, or that you need help. So self-awareness, absolutely. And for, parents who are raising children, this is very specific to the Black community, but this is a really good book, Developing Positive Self-Images and Discipline in Black Children. So this is really good for adults to read, to know, how do I show up for this child? How do I show them that they are okay, or that this problem can be worked on and solved? How do I do that? So that's my takeaway for tonight. Self-awareness in the adults.
My takeaway is pretty much about when two people come together, they both have different ways of loving each other. And oftentimes we forget about how the child wants to be loved. So I think it's important for us to also learn children's love language. We talk a lot about adults' love language. Well, children have love languages too. And so one of the questions that Gary Chapman, which is the author of the 5 Love Languages of Children, he asked the question on the back: you love your child, but does your child feel loved? And I think that that's an important question to ask yourself, ask your partner, and even ask your child or the child. So I would encourage to go into this with an open mind, that just because you are loved a certain way does not mean that the child receives love that way. And it's important to be open to changing your love language to fit the child's needs.
All right, well, that's the fall for today. So thank y'all for watching.
What y'all about to do?